Hello. This is part one of Flat Earth on Trial. This is the first time I think that I've publicly stated on a video that I am an attorney and that I've been practicing law for over 26 years. A large part of my practice has been trial practice. I've had many judge trials and I've had many jury trials, and I do know what it takes to win a trial. It takes evidence. So I'm going to be discussing some issues of evidence concerning the flat earth, and I think that a lot of you will find this interesting. One of the things that I've seen in the last day or two in more than one video by other people has been a concern that they believe that the powers that be are going to begin to try to declare flat earth believers to be incompetent or insane. I think that that would be a very difficult thing for anyone to do. I have practiced law in the probate courts. I have had guardianship trials, and I know what it takes to find someone to be incompetent. You can also, in my state, you can also request a jury trial. And I don't think a jury is going to find a competent person incompetent, especially over this issue. Before I get into any issues of evidence, I want to address a book that many of you probably have seen in your own studies and going to different YouTube channels. It's this one, Empire Under the Ice by Steve Quayle. It's interesting because I received this book in the mail just a week before I began to research the flat earth, which has now been only about 4 weeks. And it was also right at the time that I began to research the flat earth that I saw that Steve Quayle had mentioned on his website that he's had enough of this flat earth theory stuff. I can't remember his exact quote, but he just made it clear that he was not going to even consider the flat earth anymore. I don't know how much he did, if he did at all. But today I spent a little bit of time looking into his book. Again, Beneath the Ice is the name of the book. And of course the ice happens to be Antarctica. But it's very interesting. Mr. Quayle is obviously a lot more enthralled with and believing of a hollow earth than he is in a flat earth. He devotes many pages right in the middle of his book to copying someone's comments concerning a hollow earth. One of the things that I really find striking about Mr. Quayle's book is how all of his comments are couched in all kinds of qualifiers, so that it's very hard to take very much of what he says as being an actual fact or something that you could really rely on. Except, of course, when he quotes the Bible, and he does have a lot of good references concerning the Bible and also concerning our need to believe in the Lord Jesus Christ. And I commend him for that. I do not commend him, though, for refusing to look into the flat earth. One of the people I saw yesterday also talked about how he believes that many people who have large audiences on YouTube, and I think he put the figure at 2,500. If he had 2,500 subscribers, he didn't think that anyone would change their position from being a global earther to a flat earther. And the reason for that was that he believed that people would be afraid to lose their audience and their following, especially people who are making money from their subscribers, who sell books like Mr. Quayle does. And there is a lot to lose. I remember years and years ago, this is back in the 80s, where I was very upset with certain Christian leaders like James Dobson for not fully supporting the homeschool movement and for blindly continuing to support public education. And I believe that the reason had to do with the fact that most of his followers had their children in public schools, and he would have lost millions of dollars of donations. That's a huge thing. I understand that. But Jesus said we had to either follow God or follow mammon. One of the two will be our God. Either we're going to do what's right and follow God, or we're going to follow the money. Well, I've made my decision, and I made my decision a long time ago. And I've never deviated from that decision. I do not make decisions based upon how much money I'm going to make. Now, it's interesting, too. I'm going to go ahead now and get into a little bit of Flat Earth on Trial. I'm going to read a little bit from a courtroom handbook on evidence. There's an evidentiary principle called hearsay. Generally, hearsay is not admissible as evidence in a trial unless it meets certain exceptions. Hearsay is considered to be an out-of-court statement offered in order to prove the fact asserted within the statement. Now, one of the global Earth ideas that I really find to be among the most ludicrous is that the atmosphere goes around in a circle as quickly as the Earth is supposed to go around in a circle around the sun. All of you now know that at the equator, the Earth is supposed to revolve at the astounding rate of 1,000 miles per hour. But not only that, the entire atmosphere above the Earth also is supposed to rotate at that same speed. And of course, if you go higher into the atmosphere, the speed would have to be even faster because you've got that much larger diameter to go around in the same amount of time, in the 24-hour period of time. So I decided I would look up and find out why they say that the atmosphere rotates at the same speed as the Earth. And guess what their answer is? By the way, this would be their learned treatise answer, and a learned treatise is one of the exceptions to the hearsay rule. That's why I bring this up. Because if someone were to bring you or me into court, they're going to have to prove that we live on a global Earth, while we may have to prove that we live on a flat Earth. And of course, they will say, well, they know that the atmosphere spins around the globe along with the Earth. And the learned treatise will say that it does so because of friction. Can you imagine that? Friction. So think about it. Here we are on the Earth, and you know what friction is. Friction is the reason why you stop when you're pushing something along on the ground. The wheels won't go on forever. The friction will cause it to stop. But friction, the friction of the air, the molecules is what they say. The friction of the molecules adhering to the Earth keeps that atmosphere going along with the Earth. I think that's ludicrous. How could you ever prove that? Does it even make sense? What's the friction of water over water? Over the oceans, when you have water just coming up, mist and so on, what's the friction there? How would you ever prove that? they would have to get an expert witness to come into trial, and then they will have to read from a book that tells why the atmosphere goes along with the earth. And then their expert is going to have to agree with that statement and therefore make it part of their case. And that would be part of the evidence of their case in order to prove that you, a flat earther, are insane. Okay? Now I want you to think of another thing too in the same light. If in fact the atmosphere does spin at the same rate as the earth, how could it possibly be that you then have different winds blowing within that atmosphere? How could that happen? Isn't the wind part of the atmosphere? Isn't it even defined as something that happens because of atmospheric conditions? The wind is the atmosphere. So how can you have different winds going on within the atmosphere? If the atmosphere itself is blowing at 1,000 miles plus per hour, how can you have a 20 mile per hour northwest wind? I think that would be impossible. Well, those are the types of things that we will be looking at in this series called The Flat Earth on Trial.